All right, everybody, thanks for joining us today. I think we're going to get started. I'm glad to see so many attendees here today. So we're going to spend the next hour together talking about the self-publishing process. We're going to walk through all of the details that you need to consider as you take your manuscript from paper to book. The first half hour will be focused on my webinar and providing you with a lot of information. Feel free to grab a pen and paper right now to make notes. As you have questions, jot them down, and you can certainly save them for the end of the session, or you can send them to me by typing your question in, and I will try to answer them throughout the presentation. After the webinar wraps up, you will be receiving a recorded version of this. So thank you so much. Here we go. My name is Tammara Kennelly, and I'm the president of FriesenPress, and I'm excited to share with you today some information around moving through the self-publishing process. So let's get started. FriesenPress is a company that I'm very honored to be leading. We've been around for the last 6 years. We do books in all genres. So while many self-publishing companies will be vertical specific, focusing on one particular genre, FriesenPress has experts that are able to work in all genres. We provide all of the services that you would need to be able to produce your book, everything from editing, illustrations, indexing, design, distribution, and helping you to learn how to sell and market your book. All of this is done from beautiful Victoria, BC. If you had the pleasure of sitting here with me right now, you'd be able to look out the window and see that it's a gorgeous sunny day with the cherry blossoms in bloom and all of the tulips coming up. I've had a number of people at the beginning of the webinar ask about where we're located, and we are at Unit 300, 990 Fort Street. We're here from Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and we always love to have our authors drop by for a visit. No need to make an appointment. We feel that FriesenPress is somewhat unique in the self-publishing industry in that our books that we print for you and create for you are of the highest quality. We're fortunate enough to partner with our parent company, Friesens, who's well known for doing beautiful, high-quality printing in the industry. We also feel that we're unique in that we take a real ethical approach to what we do. We're very much focused on understanding your project, what the goals for your project are, and really taking a needs-based approach to helping you to fulfill your goals. It's important that we're not selling you too much and having you buy products that you don't need, but also making sure that you buy enough so that you have the right quality book at the end of the process. We also feel that we're unique in that we have all of our staff here in Victoria, BC, ready to help you with your book in a one-on-one approach. So unlike some of the competition where you'll be working with a call center, you're assigned to your very own account manager who works with you from the beginning of your project all the way through to the end when you're being published. We also feel that we're unique in that we have a pretty cool culture here in our office. We have a number of staff who are all artists just like you, whether it's being a musician, an actor, a writer. We're all creative and artistic in our own unique way, and we understand what it is to put your work out there and have people looking at it, and we're excited to help you take your baby from that manuscript stage through to a book. As I said, Friesens is our parent company, and I think one of the things that we're proudest of is the tradition and the longevity that comes with that partnership. They're over 110 years old, located in Manitoba, and I think from an ethics perspective, they're very aligned with us in that they are a top 50 employer, they're a socially environmentally conscious company, and we think that their manufacturing processes result in a top-of-the-line book for you. If you're ever curious about having a look at the printing process and seeing what Friesens looks like, visit our YouTube channel and you'll find a great 10-minute tour of their facility. So let's get into the self-publishing process and talk a little bit about the history and how all of the barriers to entry for you wonderful authors have been knocked down one at a time to give you the opportunity to self-publish. In 1989, the World Wide Web was introduced. What a great way to be able to interact with people around the world. In 1997, Lightning Source Incorporated was founded. Wow, this really opened up the doors to publishing for people. Before this, when you published your book, you would have to make a significant investment in producing a long run of your book. You'd have 10,000 books sitting in your garage that you'd be trying to sell. Now, with the advent of Lightning Source Incorporated and the technology of print on demand, you're able to print your book one at a time. As people order your book, you're able to have it printed, and your investment to be published as an author has been greatly reduced. In 2000, Stephen King, I'm sure a few of you have heard of this gentleman, he self-published one of his books and says, My friends, we have the chance to become big publishing's worst nightmare. In 2001, 29% of Americans 18 years and older owned an e-reading device, and we continue to see this growing with underdeveloped countries where smartphones are becoming available. E-reading is bigger than ever, and again, it's reduced the investment that you have to make to get into the self-publishing world. And finally, in 2008, with the emergence of crowdfunding, wow, if self-publishing hasn't become affordable enough, with crowdfunding, if you're unable to fund your project, you can put up a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo campaign, have people fundraise for you for your book project. So as you can see, so many barriers to self-publishing have been knocked down for you. It's an exciting time to be in the industry. So the self-publishing industry has experienced incredible growth. Back in 2006, for that 5-year period right up until 2011, we saw incredible growth happening. It was explosive. It's a new industry and it's emerging and everybody wanted a piece of it. What we've seen as the industry has matured is that growth rate has definitely slowed down into a more steady, less frenetic pace, but it's still healthy growth happening. It's a very exciting time. Now I'm going to show you what that looks like in a graph. In this graph, you'll see all of the ISBNs produced annually for self-publishers in the United States. An ISBN is the number that you need to have on the back of each version of your book, the soft cover, the hard cover, and the ebook, to be able to distribute it. So you can see back in 2008, there was about 85,000 self-published authors. In 2013, we've seen that number grow to almost 500,000. And so you can see the growth was quite dramatic in the past. It's definitely slowed down, but the growth has not stopped. It's still an exciting time to be a self-published author. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between self-publishing and traditional publishing. On the top, you'll see an infographic that gives you an idea of traditional publishing and the differences. So the key factors in differentiating the two are royalty rates. So with a traditional publisher, they're responsible for producing your book. They vet your content, they decide that they want to buy it, and now they own it. The investment to produce your book is borne by the traditional publisher. However, keep in mind that the rights also lie with the traditional publisher. It gives them the opportunity to change the names of your characters, the title, the plot. They can add and subtract because it's their product that they're developing with their vision. So, as you can understand, that leaves very little control in the hands of the author. It also means that because they're bearing the cost of the publishing process, your royalty rate is significantly reduced. And while you may receive an advance up front, your royalty rate is about 3 to 6% on the back end. With self-publishing, you, the author, get to choose who you want to work with. You're going to interview a number of self-publishing companies and do your research and decide who you most want to work with. You decide when the work starts. With a traditional publisher, they work on a calendar system where they're going to slot you into a timeline that works for them. It can take several years for them to even start work on a manuscript that they've purchased. You get to choose with self-publishing when you get started. You get to choose how quickly you move through that process. You get to choose what your product is going to look like. It's your vision. You're in control of your project. At the end of the day, you retain 100% of the rights to your book. If you should decide that you no longer want to work with that publishing company, you take your book and walk away, and it's yours to do with as you please. Because you bear the cost of the publishing costs up front, though, you also have a higher royalty rate. So you're looking at anywhere from 10 to 70% as a royalty rate. I know that's a really wide span. That's because it's really dependent upon the channels that your book's listed in and the expenses associated with those channels. So of course, with self-publishing, there's 2 tracks that you can wander down. Certainly as an author, you can navigate the self-publishing process on your own, a do-it-yourself process, or you can choose to work with an assisted self-publisher like FriesenPress. If you decide to walk down the do-it-yourself path, there are a few things that you need to keep in mind. You're going to become an employer, which means that you need to be comfortable creating a job posting, outlining the expectations, posting the job, gathering resumes, interviewing your candidates, evaluating their skill sets and making sure you're hiring somebody that's qualified and great. Once you hire that person, you need to make sure you have a contract that outlines all of your expectations. And finally, you need to follow up. If there's an issue and they haven't met expectations, how will you manage that? And then you make payment for service. Seems like a really arduous process, and it most certainly is. And you're going to be doing that for a number of different services. You're going to need an editor, you're going to need a designer, you'll need a printer, and you'll need someone to help you market and sell your book. With an assisted self-publisher, of course, we've done all of this work for you. Keep in mind that with self-publishing, you have a choice when you do it yourself or you hire somebody. Time equals money. So you're either going to invest time into the project and do it yourself and have to do the research and the studying required to navigate what is a fairly complex process, or you're going to be investing money into hiring a subject matter expert to help you navigate all the steps. I will say this, if you're going to try and do it yourself, be willing to learn about the process. There's a lot to learn. I'm still learning after being in self-publishing for many, many years. Be willing to try something out. Know that you're going to fail sometimes. You need to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and try again. And also make sure that you budget for a longer timeline because you're doing this yourself and learning. It's certainly going to take you longer to get from start to finish. So here's one of the most common mistakes that I see authors make that engage in the self-publishing process. While you definitely need to focus on producing your book, at the time that your manuscript is finished and you start to shop for a self-publisher, you should also be thinking about building an audience for your book. And one of the best ways to do it these days is through social media because it's widespread, you're going to reach a big audience, it's cheap, if not free. And so as you start to shop for a self-publisher, think about how you're going to build your audience. Do that at least 6 to 12 months out before you release your book. So start thinking about being on platforms like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and any other platform that you might be comfortable navigating. You're going to be really think about positioning yourself as a thought leader. So let me give you an example. Perhaps you're writing a book on training dogs. You need to be on Facebook posting great content around how to train dogs. You want to be putting stuff up that's going to catch people's eye. They're going to read it. It's great information. And they start to see you as a subject matter expert and somebody that they want to follow to learn more about dog training. As you go along, you're either curating your own content while keeping in mind that you certainly can't do that consistently. Also, leveraging other great content produced by other people. Share it widely on your social media network, and then start to leverage that audience as you move into your book production process. And as we move through this webinar, I'll talk a little bit more about how you can leverage that audience. But please keep in mind that this is a commitment that you need to make if you're going to self-publish, and it's a great investment. And the earlier you start, the better. So start to think about that. So the commitment to self-publish, I always say to authors, this is a marathon, pace yourself. I'll often see authors come in and they've finished writing their book and it's been a, often multi-year process. They're mentally exhausted. They drop their manuscript in our laps and they say, oh, call me when it's done. That's not how it works. So make sure that you're pacing yourself. Understand that writing the book is the first leg of your journey. Keep some energy aside, knowing that you need to be very involved in the self-publishing process. And then, of course, once you produce your book, there's still a need to put yourself out there to sell and market your book. And while you're doing that, you also have to maintain that daily commitment to finding great content to put onto your social media platforms to continue building your audience and keeping them engaged. So how do you choose a self-publisher? I know for myself, before I entered the industry, had I had to do this research, it would have seemed very daunting. Let's see if I can't give you a few tips to figure out who you want to work with, who best suits your needs. So of course, the first place I would start is on the internet. You can do a simple search, putting in the name of the company and the word complaints. This is always really telling and will give you some great feedback from other authors who've worked with those companies as to how they felt about their process. Another great reliable source is to go to the Better Business Bureau. When you go there, you can see how long the company's been in business, where they're located, their rating, but more importantly, you can see the number of complaints that have been levied against them, and equally important is whether those complaints were able to be resolved or not. I would talk to other authors. I know you guys are all very involved in your writing communities. Talk to other authors that have self-published. Ask about their experience. And finally, as you start to interview your shortlist of self-publishers, ask questions. Ask lots of questions. Don't be shy to ask a question. Understand everything you need to know around their process that they use, the products that they offer, the services that they offer, and the contract that you'll be signing. The service model. If you're saying I don't want to go the do-it-yourself route, it's really important to understand what that service model is that you're buying into. Obviously, that's an important piece for you because you're choosing to work with somebody as opposed to working alone. So, where's the service center located and what are their hours? Are their hours convenient for me to be able to call in? Who am I working with? Do they have any experience in this industry or are they just sitting in a call center reading off of a script? And finally, are they easy to contact? I can't stand calling into call centers and bouncing around to 20 different extensions before I get somebody that might be able to help me. At FriesenPress, you'll be able to call your account manager directly on their direct line, and if they're not available, you can leave them a voicemail. So how do you choose a package? If you've done any research on the self-publishing industry, as you go to their web pages, you'll realize that there are multiple packages available to you. What I will say is this, there's no secret to picking a package. We don't put a bunch of them up there to confuse you and there's only one right package. It's really tailored around your needs. Some people will be doing a memoir and they're planning on printing 5 copies for their grandkids. Other people think they've written the next bestseller and they're John Grisham and they want to do a super high quality book. You need to make sure the investment you're making matches the goals for your project. And that's where your publishing consultant at FriesenPress comes in, understanding your project and matching your needs to the services. I would say be careful to avoid hidden costs. If one self-publisher stands out as ultra cheap compared to the rest, there's a reason for this. So avoid the hidden costs that can come up throughout the production process. You really want to know that you're buying everything right up front that you need to finish your book from start to finish. The other thing I would say for all you great nonfiction writers out there is understand that your books are a special breed for us, particularly when it comes to the design aspect. Most publishing packages will contain a certain number of hours to be able to lay out and design your book. The nonfiction genre is special in that you have a number of complexities that need to be touched individually by a designer throughout the process, which increases the hours required to produce your book. So if you have a recipe book, a bulleted list within, if you have a number of references, footnotes, endnotes, those types of things, charts, all add complexity to your design. So keep in mind if you're writing a nonfiction book, you may want to get an idea from the very start as to what those extra costs may look like. Finally, I'll say this again, don't buy too little. Don't remove options that you need just to save money. Not a great choice because at the end of the day, if your book isn't produced with the right quality, it's not going to sell or you're not going to recover your investment. But at the same time, don't buy too much. Just because somebody thinks it's great for you doesn't mean it's great for you. So really look at the products in your package and ask yourself, is this what I need? An example, you've got an elderly woman writing her memoir for her 4 granddaughters and she's being sold the Hollywood screenplay treatment. Does she really need that? It's probably not a great investment, so buy what you need. So the devil is in the details, and we talked a little bit about how complex the process is to navigate and how convenient it can be to help somebody supporting you. I'm going to run through a few of the details that you'll need to consider if you're going to do it yourself. Trim size. Have you thought of how big your book is going to be? What measurements is it going to be? If you aren't sure what makes sense for you, because of course if I threw a whole list of numbers out at you, it would be meaningless, pop into your local bookstore, look for books within your genre, pick them up, see how they feel in your hands, understand what trim size is most commonly associated with your genre, and that will help you navigate that decision. Paper color and quality is another thing you'll have to consider. Genre. Make sure you understand which genre you fit within. Your target audience so that you can ensure when your book is listed for sale, it's targeted towards the correct readers. Your BISAC subject codes, which is a classification that's commonly used by librarians and book buyers to help them with their book buying choices. So your book will have a number of BISAC codes associated with it depending upon the subject matter. So let me give you an example. Again, if I was a dog breeder, I would go to the BISAC code list and look for pets, and then I would look for a more specific subject on dogs, and then I might narrow it down even more and look at small dogs, and finally I would look at training for small dogs. Being able to narrow down your subject matter like that makes it very easy for a librarian to type in a specific code and find books in that subject matter area. Search keywords. Again, you'll need to choose several keywords associated with your book when you list it for sale. Imagine yourself in the shoes of your reader sitting in front of the computer and they want to read the kind of book you've written. Imagine what type of words they would type in to try and find your book, and that's what you want to associate with your book as a keyword. ISBNs, you'll need to procure these if you are self-publishing and you're doing it yourself. You would touch base with the Library and Archives in Canada, and they would sell you the number of ISBNs that you would require to make your book available for sale. This is the unique identifier that booksellers will use to track your book sales to understand what volume of books you've sold. If you work with an assisted self-publisher, these will be provided to you, which is really convenient. And finally, you'll need to think about digital rights management for your ebook, the advent of ebooks. Do you want your book to be available and somebody can buy it and download it and share it widely for free? Do you want people to have to buy your book one copy at a time and each person pay for it? Or do you want a mix of rights? And that's certainly a choice that's going to be made as you move into your marketing process and decide what makes sense for you based on your marketing plan. So I talk about not buying too little and not buying too much. The one piece of advice I would give you is editing is not the place to save money. Every successful author has a great editor behind them. Normally that editor does multiple rounds of editing, and at the end of that, a separate editor does a proofread. Now I understand that most self-published authors can't afford these multiple rounds. However, your credibility is going to be seriously damaged if you put your book out there and it's riddled with spelling, punctuation, grammatical errors, etc. Make sure you buy at least one round of editing to catch as many errors as you can, while still understanding that an editor is human. They won't catch every error in one round of editing. And in fact, you've all read books by great traditionally published authors that have had multiple rounds of editing where the book still goes to print with a few errors. But I'll say this, editing is not the place to save money, so make sure that you budget to be able to get at least one round of editing. So let's talk a little bit about your cover. You've gotten through the manuscript writing process, you've had your book edited, it's time to start thinking about your cover. Here's a few tips for you to think about. Keep in mind that really a cover is a very important thing. It's what captures the reader's attention, and people do judge a book by its cover, so make sure that your cover is solid. The most common error I see authors make is that they try and tell their entire story on the cover, and so it becomes very cluttered with a number of images. Your book cover is not about telling the story. Your story will tell your story. Your cover is about capturing somebody's eye and capturing their imagination, enough so that they'll pick the book up, turn it over, and have a read what the book is about. So make sure you're coming in with a solid concept in mind as to what you want your book cover to look like, what image you might want to use on the cover. If you're working with an assisted self-publisher, they're happy to give you some direction in this regard if you don't have any ideas. But another great way to kind of generate some ideas is to pop onto one of the online booksellers and have a look at other people's book covers. The flaps on your book are such important real estate, and too often I see authors leave these blank. Your cover is very expensive, valuable real estate, so make sure you use it all. Think about what you're going to be putting onto those flaps in addition to what's on the front cover and the back cover if you're doing a hardcover version that has those flaps on the dust jacket. Think about getting a testimonial. And no, I don't mean from mom or from your sister or from your FriesenPress editor. You want to find somebody that's a recognizable figure that will read your book and provide a great testimonial. And finally, think about putting a teaser on the cover. How many times have you looked on a book in the book rack and you've seen, that one sentence on the front that catches your eye and makes you go, ooh, what's this about? You want to be able to write a teaser for your front cover that does that for your readers. So those are a few tips on producing a great cover. So you've gotten through the cover process and the designer is going to start working on the inside of your book. I can't stress this enough. You want to make sure that before you get into the design process, you have no further rewrites to make, you have no further edits to make, you feel like your book manuscript is solid. Design time is not the time to be making all of these edits. Designers charge a fairly significant hourly rate, and so you really want to keep your revision rounds for those design revisions. So are you unhappy with the size of the font? Are you unhappy with the type of font that they've used? Is there a sentence hanging by itself on a page where you want it brought over to the other page? Think about those sorts of design revisions, and don't leave this time to be used for rewrites and edits, okay? Really, really important. This is where you can spend a lot of money or save a lot of money. So make sure you're handing in a manuscript to the designer that you feel is solid and ready to go. Normally your design will be handed off to you in PDF version, and that's your opportunity to make your revisions. So know how to use the markup tools in a PDF. Make sure that the markups that you're making are super specific. Your designer isn't going to be sitting right next to you, and you don't want to have to go back and forth for multiple rounds. That, of course, adds expense. So be specific with your feedback to the designer. Take this opportunity with that great social media platform that you've built to use that crowd as an opportunity for feedback on your book. So release a chapter, release the manuscript, have a select audience review it and provide you with feedback. I'll say this, you're your own worst enemy at this stage. Have you ever been in high school or university and you're up at midnight putting the finishing touches on that paper that you've been working on for hours? And suddenly everything blurs, it all looks the same. The errors that are there are escaping your attention. Fresh eyes on your book are so important. So use your social media platform to crowdsource that feedback. Friends, family, have another set of eyes on it, because a lot of the errors that have escaped your attention throughout the process will escape your attention at the revision round. So now you've made it through, you've got your design finalized, you're thrilled with your book, you've signed off on that final version of your book. It's time to price your book and think about the royalties. Understand that the price that you set for your book will drive your royalties. So of course, the higher the price, the higher the royalty, the lower the price, the lower the royalty. This is an important decision for you to make as it relates to your marketing plan and what your intentions for the book are. Also understand, as I said at the beginning, that there are going to be different royalty rates for different channels. Think about pricing as it relates to your genre. So somebody who is a subject matter expert in a particular area that's written a nonfiction book that's very unique can certainly ask a higher price for their book, as opposed to somebody that's written a romance novel where there are millions of other romance novels competing for the buyer's dollar. So take some time to pop into the online book sellers and see what your genre is demanding from a pricing perspective and make sure that you're competitive. I will say this, as you shop self-publishers, understand that royalty rates are not all the same. Some of them will quote their royalty rates as a net royalty, which means here's the price of your book, it's $40, it costs $30 to produce, that leaves $10 at the end as the net price. That's what you're going to be earning your royalty on, as opposed to the gross model, which is your book is $40 and we're going to calculate your royalty based on that $40. So make sure you're clear as you're shopping around what that looks like. I would say one of the greatest benefits of working with an assisted self-publisher is how easy it is to make your book available to 38,000 online bookstores with the click of one button, having your royalties aggregate into one report. Imagine you're doing it yourself. You have to log on to every one of those 38,000 sites, create an account, upload the book, manage your royalties, and log on a monthly basis to see how it's doing. So one of the benefits of working with an assisted self-publisher is that they can aggregate those 38,000 channels into one portal for you. And finally, I'll say this, one of the most common complaints that I will get from an author as it relates to royalties is that misperception of being a bestseller. They'll call me and they'll say, oh, Tammara, I'm a bestseller on this online bookseller today. I'm so excited. I'm going to be rich. And what they don't understand is that is definitely used as a marketing tool. And so while you may be a bestseller, what was the qualifier for that best-selling category? Was it a very, very specific type of book, and there's only 3 books like that on their site, and you sold 1 copy that day and they sold none? So when somebody says you're a bestseller, just ask a few qualifying questions to understand what that really means. Time to go to print. So you've priced your book out and you understand the royalty program, and it's time to start printing. As I said earlier, there is certainly the opportunity to do print on demand where your book is available to those 38,000 online booksellers. And as it's ordered one at a time, it's printed one at a time and fulfilled to your readers through the mail. There's also the opportunity to do offset printing. And as I said, here at FriesenPress, we do that with our parent company, Friesens. And of course, as you buy in volume, the discounts are significant. So if you have an idea of what your sales could potentially be, you've built an audience and whatnot, there are definite benefits to doing an offset print run to save money, which allows you to earn more as an author. Finally, as you're choosing a printer, think about the quality of the printing that you get. Again, this is one of those areas where you get what you pay for. So think about the binding on the spine. Is it a good quality binding, or the page is going to start falling out after it's been read once? What is the trim going to look like? Is it going to be, cut with a cheap cutter that makes it look like a hacksaw pulled it apart, or is it going to be nice and smooth and level and consistent? Think about the color quality. If you're doing a color book, you want to make sure that the color quality is high. And finally, think about the paper quality. Paper comes in different weights, thicknesses, textures, colors, so you need to think about that. And finally, of course, you need to think about promoting your book. You might think that you're done after the production process and you've navigated a number of choices, but now you need to go and market and sell your book. And at FriesenPress, we have a book promotion team here that'll sit down and do a vision interview with you and help create a marketing plan based on your unique strengths. Definitely in self-publishing, one of the biggest challenges is discoverability. As you can imagine, you saw the number of ISBNs being issued on an annual basis, and those books survive infinitum. They no longer need to be in print to be available. Because of print on demand, those books can stay for sale for years and years, and so that database of books builds and builds. How will your book be discovered? And that's a question that you need to consider. Some of the ways that you can accomplish this goal is by getting a professional book review done. We offer book reviews through Kirkus and Clarion, and I think they're both really great, reputable companies. You can certainly make free copies available to that great social media following that you've built and ask for book reviews from them in return, whether that be on Amazon or Goodreads or another platform of your choosing. You definitely need to think about having an author website and blog. This is a great way to build that interaction with your readers and also to make yourself available for people that are looking for you and wanting to learn more about you. And finally, don't forget, you need to be doing that regular social media post and that interaction with your audience. And so finally, let's wrap up with talking about how you can fund your project. Some of us are lucky enough that we're able to do so with our own resources. Certainly, if you find that the price tag is prohibitive to you making a payment all at once, FriesenPress offers payment plans over a period of up to 6 months. Another great and recent advent is the crowdsourcing. So for sure, you can put a campaign up on Indiegogo or Kickstarter or any other platform of your choosing and fundraise in that regard. And for our published authors at FriesenPress, we love to make our referral program available, and it's a great way to fund your next book. You are all interconnected in your author communities, and it's so hard finding a great self-publisher. If you've found one that you love, talk about us. As you send referrals through, we'll either pay you $150 cash for every closed sale, or we'll give you a $250 credit towards purchasing products and services at FriesenPress. A fantastic way to fund your next project, and great for the person you're referring because we offer them a 10% discount for whatever they purchase. And so that brings me to the end of the webinar, and I've noticed as I've been speaking throughout that the questions are building. So we're going to take a 1-minute pause for me to dig through the questions, and I'm going to start answering them. If you have a question that's been burning on your mind, please feel free to submit it. I will get through as many questions as I can right up to our noon cutoff. If you find that at the end of the presentation I haven't gotten to your question, please feel free to reach out to one of our publishing consultants. They are as capable as I am of providing you with the information that you need, and they're available at the 1-800 number up on your screen. So I thank you for your time, and we will pause for a minute. I will allow you to submit your questions, and we'll proceed with answering them. Thanks so much. All right, so I'm going to start from the top with the questions and work my way down. I think one of the most common questions that we hear from authors are, what's the timeline from start to finish to publish my book? In particular, this person is asking, is it possible to get a small book under 25,000 words done in 2 months? I will say this, there are some fixed aspects to the publishing process that definitely it's a fixed timeline. So I generally say that if you're going to publish your book and you're going to include an editing round, and you definitely don't want to rush editing because the quicker it's done, the poorer the quality. 25,000 words, while it's not a lot, it definitely is going to take the editor a bit of time to work through a few times. I would say, leave yourself around 4 months. Certainly there are opportunities to expedite some of our processes, but I still say about 4 months is a good safe timeline. However, what I always say is this, it's 4 months of FriesenPress time, of us doing work on your book. This is an interactive process of us sending all sorts of materials back for your feedback, us asking you to make choices and decisions. And when an author delays in that regard, it adds significant time to your publishing timeline. So the quicker you turn materials around to us, the quicker you'll move through the process. But I always worry about the word quicker when it comes to self-publishing, because you want to take the right amount of time to inject quality. So you don't want to rush through the processes that you need to complete either. So I would say that if a self-publisher promises to get a book done within a month or two, understand that you're going to get what you're paying as far as time is concerned. Take the time, take the care. You've written this book, you put your heart into it. Make sure when you publish it that you don't have, heartsick regrets when your books show up on your doorstep and they're riddled with errors. So I hope that answers that question. I have a number of questions up here in regards to books and quotes as to what it would cost you to produce your book. We're happy to field those questions one by one. I certainly can't produce quotes on the spot here right now. Feel free to call in and talk to our publishing consultants. However, keep in mind that this is just a quote. As you move through the publishing process and you choose your trim size, and we better understand your page count based on the font size that you're choosing and whatnot, the pricing really relates to paper and ink. So we need to understand the size of your book to be able to give you an accurate end quote, but we can certainly give you a good estimate right from the start. So feel free to call in and we'll generate a custom quote for you. I have a question here. Do authors retain copyrights? And I think we covered that off at the beginning, in that if you self-publish, the rights 100% stay with you. If you traditionally publish, you completely lose your rights over your work. So with self-publishing, you do retain your right. Read your contract carefully. So whomever you decide to publish with, if that's a priority for you, double check that that's in fact the case with that self-publisher. All right, so somebody here is asking, what is DIY? So that's do it yourself, meaning you're not working with an assisted self-publisher. It means you're doing it yourself. Let's see here. What else do I have? Do you folks help with getting a blog going? Absolutely. So while we will not generate all of your unique content that's going to populate into your different social media channels, we can definitely help you set them up. So we have specialists here that will set up blogs for you. They'll set up websites. They'll set up your social media pages. They'll put that structure together, and then they will get you on the phone and give you the administration credentials to log into that account and walk you through the process to populate your content onto those platforms. So we don't offer services where we create your daily content, but we certainly will help you create those structures where you can populate your content on a daily basis. And it's actually quite easy with the tools that we have nowadays. So we're happy to help you with that. I have a question here. Should I use a different Facebook page than your personal one? And I would say absolutely yes. Those two Facebook pages are going to have very different reasons for existing, and so I would definitely keep them separate. For your personal life, you want to maintain that with your personal group of friends and probably not share it out with your readers. And with your readers, you're going to be sharing a lot of information around your book and book events and whatnot that may or may not interest your personal group. So I would recommend having two separate pages. Let's see here. How do you build an audience for a fiction book? So again, I would say, what's most interesting to your readers that would fall within that genre? And it's a great place to Google. You can definitely get a lot of information online as to different approaches you can take. And then I would also say our book promotions team is a really great team to leverage for them to put together a marketing plan for you that directly relates to your book. Again, I will reiterate that this is recorded and we will be sending it out to everybody. I've had a number of people submitting questions in this regard, so you will get a recorded version to refer back to later and to see all of the PowerPoint information. When should you begin editing is the next question. And I would say that it's never too soon to start editing. However, I'd also think that you don't want to get a number of editors involved throughout the writing process. You want to make sure that you're leveraging one consistent voice for one full edit of the book before you pass it on to a second set of eyes. So I don't think it's ever too soon to begin editing, especially if you're doing any sort of substantive or content editing. It's great to get feedback from people to say, look, like you're spending too much time on this character, it's not interesting, or oh, you talked about this person, I wish you had said more, or you talk about a car in the 1950s as being a Hyundai Santa Fe. Well, that doesn't make sense because those didn't exist back then. That sort of feedback is invaluable to get throughout your writing process so that you're able to implement it earlier in the writing process rather than later. However, when your manuscript is completed and you're happy with that first version, that's a great time to send it out to a wide audience and have them all provide you with editing that you can integrate back into your master copy. So I think editing is important. I don't think you can have too much editing. It's great to have that feedback. Once your manuscript is complete, I would get a professional editor to do a full walkthrough at least once. Let's see. When should you get copyrights? I'm thinking of it if you are sharing parts around. So it's definitely important that you copyright your work once it's completed. If you have any concerns around who you're sharing it with and the fact that it may put your work in jeopardy, then I would hold off and copyright your work before you start sharing it. And that is a service that we offer here. It's also something that you can do yourself. If you're choosing the do-it-yourself route, you can register your copyright. We work with the U.S. Copyright Office, and that's what I would recommend. Let's see, what else do we have out here? Oh, I love this question. It says it would be great to have a mini webinar regarding producing children's picture books. So we do have a number of webinars planned after this one, and we certainly are looking at becoming more vertical specific with children's books. It's a genre that we love and coincidentally have a number of subject matter experts here already on staff. And so I am rapidly writing down your request, and I hope that we will have a webinar of this nature available shortly. So thank you, Terry, for that. Let's see here. Just moving through the questions, lots of repeats. Do you have any publishing consultants based in Canada, Toronto in particular? So we are centrally based here in Victoria, British Columbia. All of our staff is here right now. We are available by phone, and we find that we're able to walk through that full process with an author by phone. So feel free to give us a buzz, and we can certainly work with you to understand your project. And then again, a similar question, somebody in South Florida. No, this doesn't pose a problem in dealing with us. Give us a buzz. We deal with authors all across North America. Our process is all done by phone and online, so we're happy to work with authors anywhere in North America. And I would also remind authors that while we are here in person Monday to Friday, if that's not convenient for you, we now have publishing consultants in the office on Saturday. So if you find it easier to contact us from home when you're not working, feel free to call us on Saturdays anytime between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Do I need multiple ISBNs if I want to market my books in different countries? Thank you, Lee, for that question. No, you do not. You do require a separate ISBN for each version of your book. So you'll need one for your hardcover, one for your softcover, and one for your ebook. And that will allow you to distribute your book worldwide. And when I quote that we work with 38,000 booksellers, those are booksellers all around the world. And so, no, you don't need multiple ISBNs for different countries. Great question. Let's see, I have a question here. How can we tell whether a binding from one printer is better than any other binding? That is, how can I determine whether the book will fall apart? Well, I think that's one of the benefits of working with an assisted self-publisher is that we've vetted their process. We understand the quality of their production process. We understand how the book is sewn together with the unique signatures. We understand the type of glue that's being used to glue all of the signatures together into a book block. We understand the material that's being used to reinforce all the signatures of your book block. And then we understand the gluing process for gluing it to the case of the book. And so those are all the steps that are involved with creating the binding of your book. And so it's really hard to know what that quality is like when you don't understand their production processes. Certainly when you open a book and you open it nice and wide, you can tell the difference where there's quality and it's holding together versus where you can see the pages are starting to separate already if you hold it open nice and wide. So, as a reader, have that experience of opening it, crack it open a few times, see how it reacts. But it is really hard to tell what the quality is until you've opened it 100 times and done that stress test, unless you understand the materials used to put the book together. Thanks for that question, Michelle. Can you clarify fundraising for the book? Barbara asks. Great question, Barbara. And I would say that it's the process is different for every platform that you go on to. There are a number of platforms. Some of them are very generic platforms that allow you to fundraise for multiple types of products. Some of them are very book specific. And so each one has a different process. Each one costs a different amount. And so I would say log on to those websites and have a look at what their process is. But generally, you're going to be sharing with your audience a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your book and what your book is about. You may share an excerpt from the book for people to get a taste of what your book is about. You may include a video. Definitely the presentations vary from one platform to the other. So that, again, is a place where you need to do a little bit of research. So Laura asks a question, is it in or out of integrity to be talking, learning, researching with more than one publishing company? I would say as a consumer, anytime you're making a buying decision, you're not talking to just one provider. I think it's important to do your research to understand what the different offerings are. Not all self-publishers are equal and alike. Not all products are equal and alike. And you want to make sure that you're buying with somebody that you trust, that you feel good about working with, that has the products and services that you need. So I would say, Laura, definitely do your research. We're glad that you do your research. And we think that our authors come back to us because they've done their research and they understand that FriesenPress stands out in the industry as an ethical, honest, high-quality self-publisher. So I would encourage you to do your research and don't be afraid to share with the different salespeople the fact that you are doing your research and ask questions as to how they compare and contrast. Judy asks, are you only doing publishing in Canada and with Canadian sources? So Judy, as I mentioned earlier, we work throughout North America with authors. Now, having said that, we definitely work with authors worldwide. We market in North America, but we find a number of authors in other countries find us and come to us, and we're always happy to work with them. And as I said, we distribute worldwide. So the book is available with 38,000 online booksellers worldwide. So we're happy to work with authors in Canada and the US and across the world. Okay, so Sam, you ask a wonderful question. Thank you. When building the book in a Word document, is there a font and type size to use to work with the ebook and print on demand online options so that less editing would be required at the stage that it's given to Friesen. So what I would say is this, Sam. Depending on who you're working with, you're going to want to look at their specifications. Every publisher has different preferences. I would say the most important thing to consider is that you stay consistent with your manuscript. So don't put in a lot of styling. Don't um, don't try and do tabs and two spaces between the period and all of that styling that can be accomplished by a designer. We really, as designers, just want your Word document plain and simple. Don't worry about styling it for us, because any styling that you do within the Word document, we strip it out before we bring it into our InDesign program. And it's the InDesign program where we do all of the styling of the bold and the italics and the spacing and all of that good stuff. So my best advice to you, Sam, is keep your manuscript very simple. Don't insert any styling. Choose a font, choose a size, stay consistent with it, and let us do all the styling once you hand it in to us. All right, let's see what else we have here. So Ed asks, does Friesen Offset have a printer in Canada or the US, or is the printing done offshore? Thanks for that question, Ed. We're really proud that all of the business that we do is done here in Canada and the US. So as I said, all of our staff are located here in Victoria, BC. All of our offset printing is done at our parent company, which is Friesen's, and they're located in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Actually, not Winnipeg, they're in a small town about an hour and a half away called Altona. And so all of our offset printing is done there. And then all of our print on demand printing, where we print copies one at a time, is done through a company called Lightning Source Incorporated, and they're located in the United States. And so Lisa asks, are books of poetry and short stories a popular genre? Lisa, that's a great question. We definitely work with a lot of poetry books here. Short stories can be a little more challenging for authors because every publisher will have a minimum page count requirement to be able to produce and print your book. So that's a really good question to ask with each self-publisher to understand what the restriction is around the short stories. But we do a lot of poetry here at FriesenPress. Let's see, what else do we have here? So we've got about 5 minutes left in the program. I'm going to squeeze in as many more questions as I can. And again, if I don't get to your question, please feel free to call our publishing consultants, and they're happy to walk you through any questions that you may have with no commitment. Kathleen asks, if you don't want to handle marketing, can you hire someone separately that does that? I would say yes, you can. Publicity is not a service that we offer here at FriesenPress, nor do we provide ongoing marketing services where we generate content for your social media platforms and talk to bookstores to try and get you in there for book signings and have them carry your book physically, etc. So it's not something that FriesenPress offers. We will teach you how to do all that, and then you need to go and do it yourself. But if you're looking to hire somebody that does it for you, I would say, again, do your research, look for a publicist that has a great reputation and a track record for working with authors where they've had really good feedback, and leave room in your budget. Of course, it's not a cheap endeavor to hire a publicist to represent your book. Omar asks, how much does a copyright number cost? So I think there's a couple of questions in there. There's copyright, and then there's the ISBN number, and I'm not sure what you're asking about, so I'll answer both. Omar, if you come to FriesenPress, you're able to register your copyright. We'll do all that work for you. I believe the pricing is somewhere in the range of $200. I don't have it in front of me, but it's relatively inexpensive. If you come to FriesenPress, your ISBN numbers are included in your publishing package. If you want to purchase them on your own, you'll have to look at what current pricing is with the Library and Archives Canada in Canada or Bowker in the United States, and it ranges anywhere from a couple $100 to buy a block of ISBNs. So you'll need to do a little bit more research to get your exact numbers, but that gives you an idea of rough cost. Jeffrey asks, how many unique authors are in the 500,000 ISBNs that were generated in 2013? Jeffrey, I would say if you pop onto the Bowker website, this is where I get all of my research information, and it's where I leveraged that information. Bowker is spelled Bowker, and they are the central agency in the United States where authors register their ISBNs and where they're distributed. And they have a lot of great industry research, and much of it is available for free. So pop onto their website, and I'm sure you can find out more. Having said that, normally most authors will do a soft cover, a hardcover, and an ebook. So I would say divide that 500,000 by 3, and it's a pretty safe number for the number of authors that would be included in that group. Let's see here. One final question. I'm just reading through them. And so the final question I'm going to answer for Laura. She says, my book is partially written. Is it premature to begin this process? So Laura, I would say, don't buy a publishing package until your book is complete. You can certainly come to FriesenPress for a number of a la carte services. For example, your book is partially done and you're stuck and you need some feedback on how to proceed and finish your book. We have a great editorial evaluation service where the editor will read what you've done so far and give you a lot of great feedback on the strengths and weaknesses of your book and answer any questions you may have in regards to the direction that you could take the book in to finish. Or Laura, if you're partway through and you'd like to get a little bit of editing assistance, again, you can bring that manuscript to us and buy an editing only service, and we'll support you with that. And finally, I'd say one of the most motivational services I've seen authors buy that works really well for them when they're only partially through is to come in and have your book cover created. Having that visual in front of you as you're writing your book can be really motivational and really give you the energy that you need to finish this leg of the journey. So great question, Laura. If you're interested in any of those a la carte services, give us a call and we're happy to help you with them. So that brings us to noon, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. It was really exciting to share all of this information with you. I hope it helps you along with your journey and all the choices that you have to make. And again, if we can support you in any way, please feel free to give one of our publishing consultants a call. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a wonderful day.